Salutations friends, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a fun one. Get ready for stupid analogies and me talking in circles because we're going to be having a chit chat about clones and dupes today, guys. So let's get into the video. Now, first things first, any views I express in this video are completely my own. And I'm going to be talking to you as a consumer. And I'm also going to be trying to kind of come at you from both sides, explain why I think that there's a market for this and why it's okay, but also kind of explain to you guys why I can see that there is an issue. Now, I already pre-filmed this video and I talked in so many circles, it was impossible for me to edit. So I'm going to try to keep this video as short and sweet and not use too many analogies, because then you're going to be like, girl, we're not even talking about fragrances at this point. I'm going to be using the handbag metaphor throughout this video, and I hope that that will be a good example when we come to talk about comparing prices, comparing dupes and clones, artistic integrity, and just, you know, also pricing things just for the sake of pricing things expensive. Now, there are two different ways that I look at this. I agree with artistic integrity and not having your art stolen, because I get my art stolen all the time. That's a completely other video. If you guys would like to know about that, let me know. And then it comes down to kind of sticking it to the man, saying, you know what, fisticuffs, let's go, like kind of stuff like that. Like, why would you charge $500 for a bottle of perfume that literally only costs $10 to make, you know? Like, what's the point? Like, you're not even giving me good presentation at this point. Like, you're not even giving me a fancy box, just a cardboard box that's poorly wrapped in cellophane. We're not even doing a good job at presentation to pretend like this is worth the money. Now, as somebody who spends way too much money on fragrance, I have no problem spending money on fragrance. My budget for fragrance is huge. My budget for everything else is lacking. I used to collect designer handbags. I really love Saint Laurent. Had a few Celine's in there, and I sold most of them. I had like, okay, so over the course of the last few years, I think I had like 20 designer handbags. And I'm not talking about like design, I'm talking about like, girl, like you could buy a car with like your collection or put a decent down payment on a house. I sold most of my designer handbags because I found I really only used 3 of them. And I'm kind of sad I sold my Saint Laurent tote, but I might buy a new one, but that's for another video. But I just like, I don't need this many bags. And I bought perfume with all that money. But we're going to be going into handbags when I talk about this, because I think it's as a luxury good, and some people that have like artisanal, like look at the artistry of designer goods and leather goods and things like that, I think then using that as a metaphor will be good. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our dupes and clones, and I mean direct, not fragrances that smell identical, but obviously they're not meant to be identical because this fragrance was created before this fragrance, or they released around the same time, so there was no way that this company had enough time to create, market, and distribute this scent. We're talking about direct clones. I have, and this is me talking in circles, I have only purchased one fragrance that was considered a dupe, but I don't think it was a dupe. I think it was a coinky-dink that it smells the same, and that is Ariana Grande Cloud, and it smells like Baccarat Rouge 540. Every other clone or dupe I have of Baccarat Rouge was given to me. Or the other ones I purchased smelled dang similar, and I purchased it because it smelled dang similar, but they were not designed to be a dupe. So any dupe that I've purchased were like accidental dupes, like, hey, this kind of is reminiscent of this, and not like this is a literal ripoff of this fragrance. Now, when it comes down to fragrances and companies and integrity and artistic theft and things like that, I think it's important to, when you look at the brand and you look at the fragrance house and things like that, who are you hurting the most? So recently, I'd say within the last like 5 years, a lot of companies, these smaller but still very large fragrance companies, have been bought up by major umbrella corporations. Think Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, LMVH, and every time I say that, the letters and numbers change. I know there's no numbers in it, but you get what I'm saying. They're bought up, their formulations change or get watered down, or the prices go up exponentially even though there was no change to anything. It just went up to go up. I don't agree with prices being prestige for the sake of prestige. You have to have some reason for the prices to go up. And obviously things change. And if you reformulate something, it might cost more money. There's a lot of different reasons why things can go up. But I think we all know a few brands that just seem to increase their prices just so they can charge more money. And then you have the smaller brands, but are still larger brands that sell luxury, high-end niche fragrances that are notoriously being ripped off. Now, the reason why I'm going to say that these are small but large brands is when you're looking at these umbrella corporations, when you're looking at a brand that owns a brand that owns a brand that owns a brand, you're looking at some of these businesses that own everything. They literally own everything. I mean, you can't go to the bathroom and wash your hands without realizing that the soap you bought and the thing that you wiped your hands on, and then the door handle, the branding of the door handle, everything's owned by that one corporation. Like, those are the people that I don't think are going to really take a hitting when it comes down to dupes and clones. But these smaller but larger houses, so houses that, let's say that they make between $3 to $5 million a year in profits on their fragrances. And you might say, dang, but when you're looking at cosmetics and fragrances and things like that, that's a lot of money individually, but within the market of the beauty world, that is a small, tiny, minuscule amount of money. And to say this brand sells 100,000 bottles a year worldwide, that's wholesaler to be in specific boutiques, that's to online retailers, that's within their own space. If you're looking at 100,000 bottles and they get 1,000 fragrances counterfeited and stolen from them, that's 1%. And that might not seem like a lot of money, but that could be the difference between them being able to fund a new fragrance, or them being able to lower prices, or them being able to give you guys something that you want. Maybe you want better caps, maybe you're demanding better presentation. That all costs money. Maybe you don't like the shape of their bottles and they really want to redo their bottles. Well, ordering a new mold of bottles is expensive. Trust me, I know. I worked in glassware. I know the cost of glassware. And all of that could take a toll on them being able to give you a better experience. So those brands, yes, it might not seem like a lot, but it hurts them more directly than these other brands that are, again, brands that are owned by brands that are owned by brands that are owned by brands. Now, those brands within those brands within those brands, drinking game. Take a shot every time I say brands. Please don't drink responsibly. Those brands still within their company, their corporations, they still have, goals. It's not just like it's all underneath this one big umbrella. They're going to hold those smaller brands, those smaller companies, and the smaller houses and lines to like specific sales goals and things like that. So just because a brand is owned by a brand, doesn't mean that they don't get negatively affected by clones and counterfeits. But it is less harsh for these kind of like more singularly owned, or like maybe owned by one or two investors, fragrance houses that are kind of running underneath like one nose and maybe like two other people to work with them. So that's what I just see in regards to counterfeits, dupes, things like that, hurting brands. If it's a counterfeit, dupe, clone, direct ripoff of, say, Chanel No. 5, Terry Mugler Angel, of, I don't know, whatever hip, cool, new men's fragrance that the kids are talking about. Is it Aventus? Is it Bleu de Chanel? Is it Sausage? One of those. Those houses aren't going to hurt because people can't afford those fragrances. And Bleu de Chanel and Sauvage, Sausage, or just call it Sausage, those are still kind of affordable, but they're still luxury price. Not everyone's going to want or think it's sensible, even if they have the money, to spend that much money on a bottle of perfume. So if they find something that kind of smells similar or the same or identical, maybe performs better, and they're only spending like 30 to 40 bucks on it rather than 150, 200, and 500 depending on creed, I can see people saying, I'm not going to pay for overpriced scented water. I understand that. So this is where we're going to go to the lovely fishing metaphor of handbags. And obviously, if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you for dealing with my garble, because I don't think I've made sense the past 10 minutes. But what I want to talk about is this specific handbag metaphor. So we're going to talk about Birkins. So view a Birkin like a very expensive house that shall not be named. It's overpriced for the sake of being overpriced fragrance. That doesn't mean that there isn't a quality to the ingredients. That doesn't mean that there isn't a quality to the craftsmanship. But dang, if you're gonna spend $20,000 on a handbag. I am surprised I haven't bought a Birkin yet, considering what I used to spend on handbags. But I think if it had a crossbody option, and everyone's like, Kelly, is this one? I don't know. I just haven't gotten that round to it, and I don't think I ever will. It's just not my cup of tea, and clock me if I end up like in the next few years getting one. But I spend my money on perfume. That's what I spend my money on. I spend it on perfume. But like you look at say just a standard run-of-the-mill everyday Birkin bag. I'm not going to go into sizes. I'm not going to go into exotic materials. Just whatever Birkin bag. It's probably going to be between $15,000 to $20,000. That's a lot of money for a handbag, even if the quality of the craftsmanship is perfect. And even if everything's handmade, it's this imported leather, that's still $20,000 for a purse. So you look at that and you're like, I might be able to afford it, but I'm never going to spend that much money on a bag because that's ridiculous. And then you're like, but I still need a handbag, and I like the look of the Birkin bag. I think it looks really classy. It looks like it'll hold all my stuff. I think it looks really smart and attractive. I just am not going to spend that. I'm never, ever going to spend that much money on a bag. And then since it's so popular, since it's such like a fashion staple icon, you have a lot of other companies that are coming out with Birkin-inspired bags. Now then there are the people who create direct counterfeits of Birkins. And then there are people who create more inspired bags that look like a Birkin, but you obviously know it's not a Birkin because it's got a strap or it's a different color or it's made of canvas. And those canvas Birkins cost more than the leather ones sometimes. I really like the wicker Birkins though. I'm just throwing that out there. So, you know you're never going to spend that much money on a bag, but you like the way it looks and the way it feels. You don't want to support the exact counterfeit because that just feels not right to you. But this brand who has this bag that's a little bit more sensibly priced, probably still, pricey, and it's a really good, I've seen really good brands that kind of recreate the Birkin style in quality materials, maybe not leather, maybe like a really beautiful faux leather. You're looking at spending maybe $150 to $500. You're still spending a lot of money on a bag, but it's not $20,000. So you say, you know what, I'm gonna get this bag. And you get it, you use it, you love it. And then your fellow neighborhood corner store Hermes rep looks at you with that fake bag and they're like, you stole money out of my pocket because you didn't buy my Birkin. And then you're going like, but I never was going to buy it. I could never afford it, ever. And so it's no money out of your hands. And I kind of see that with fragrance houses, with fragrances that are incredibly overpriced for the sake of being overpriced, but also at the same time, there's like almost like a nameless, shapeless fake behind the company. Now, with major designer houses, there's creative directors, there's no's that these fragrance houses work with to establish scents so that they can have a cohesive line. I'm not saying they're nameless and they're faceless, but it's not like a house that is owned by a nose, and that nose is not only the creative director of the house, but they also are the person who's out there promoting. They're the face of the house, they're the marketing of the house, and they're also putting every dollar that they have into that house. Now, they might make millions of dollars a year, but them smelling, you walking down the street wearing a fragrance that was their creation, that they recognize because they know the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. They say, you know what? I smell that. That's great. Are you wearing my scent? And you're like, no, I got it from this, rip-off website. And they know that that's money out of their pocket because some of those discount dupe clone shops are equally priced with some of these fragrances that they dupe and clone. And so for them, it's more of a real money out of their pocket than these huge corporations where you couldn't afford it anyway. So I can see them being more hurt, them being more active, them being more upset at fragrance houses or people that dupe and clone their creations, because it is hurting them, rather than these big corporations that don't really have a personal touch when it comes to their fragrances and their designs, and they're just kind of coming out with flanker after flanker. And at the same time, you know, the people that are creating these bags, you know, one person isn't sitting there making these bags. They have a team of people probably across the world in different areas making these things. So, and if anyone out there has Birkins and you're going to tell me that I'm wrong with how I'm saying, just substitute any crazy bag because I think you understand what I'm trying to say. It's not one person creating a scent and then being a part of the entire process and then seeing their work stolen. It's a giant conglomerate corporation that's, you know, obviously invested a lot of money, but they're not going to be as hurt by dupes and clones. So I'm at the point where I'm talking in circles. So I'm going to try and kind of TLDR it for you. And I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you disagree with what I'm saying? What are your thoughts specifically on clones and dupes? And I'm talking again about exact ripoffs, like counterfeit, like not just an inspired fragrance that smells similar and a lot of people flock to it because it smells similar. I mean an exact ripoff. I find myself leaning more on the side of the artist and being upset for people that have their work ripped off, because personally, with my experience with my art, it happens all the time. Oh my goodness, again, I could get into it. But I also understand a consumer's point of view. If you are never going to spend that much money on a fragrance anyway, and if you're iffy on buying samples, decants, travel sizes, or if the company doesn't offer that option, if you are never going to spend the money on that fragrance anyway, that's money that they were never going to see. So if you want to purchase something like that, I can also understand as well. It's such a gray area, guys. I mean, it's such a gray area. But I have no problem with houses that create inspired fragrances of really, really mainstream fragrances. Again, think Chanel No. 5. Think anything from Armani. That's not Armani Privé. Think fragrances from Versace, fragrances from Chanel, fragrances from Dior. Those fragrances that it's a saturated market already, I don't think that there's anything wrong with fragrance, people creating inspired or cloned fragrances so people can get those for dollars rather than tens of dollars. You know, you can find a really beautiful clone of some of these fragrances for $20 rather than $120. I understand people gravitating towards those scents, and I also agree with it because a lot of times those houses, those conglomerates will raise the price just for the sake of raising the price. We all know what house I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say it out loud. Because at the end, I don't think it's hurting the everyday person. I don't think it's hurting the artisan. But for some of these smaller indie houses, I think it does hurt the artisan, and that's where I'm kind of like, I don't agree with it. But I think I've talked enough about this. I've talked in circles. This really is a controversial topic, and I didn't want to sit here and say anybody was bad for buying a clone, because some people just don't have the money. And even if you do have the money, you might say, no, I'm not buying that overpriced garbage. And then there's the artisans out there, the noses that create these works of art, and they're seeing their artwork ripped off, and you know, they're legitimately upset too. It is such a sticky slope. So I just kind of like wanted you guys to know where I stand. I have no problem with houses that create inspired fragrances of accessible designer fragrances or incredibly overpriced luxury fragrances that are literally just overpriced for the sake of being overpriced, and there's no justification as why there was a price jump. And normally those brands are owned by these brands that owns brands that owns brands that owns brands. However, I think that there is an integrity that has to be maintained as well when you're talking about these smaller, more independently owned niche indie and luxury houses. Some of these fragrances, again, some of these houses are terribly successful and their prices are very expensive. But the thing is they don't have near the overhead as some of these other companies, so their costs are going to be higher just in general. So I think that those houses and those brands, I don't like when those fragrances are directly ripped off. So it's a little bit contradictory, my opinion. It's a little bit hypocritical, but that's kind of like why I wanted to have this conversation with you. I think that everyone is right and everyone is wrong, no matter what side you come from. But I think at the end of the day, we have to hold brands accountable, and we have to speak up when we think brands are overcharging literally only to overcharge. They're not changing presentation, they're not changing formula, or the formula is getting worse, or the presentation is getting worse, and they're jacking up the cost so exponentially. You're like, what's the point? Or then you have houses that are more artistic, luxury, and a lot of attention to detail comes to presentation, ingredients, and just the quality of the overall experience from squirt to box. That sounded weird. Those houses are the ones that I am more sympathetic towards when their intellectual property is stolen. But at the same time, there might be some people out there that would never buy it anyway. So is it money out of their pocket if these people would never buy it anyway? Maybe they only want their fragrance to be experienced by people that can afford it. Maybe they're gatekeeping this experience by price. But if that's their brand and that's the money they put into it, I can understand. Do I agree with it? Not in every case. But do I understand? Yeah. This is such, again, one of those topics that there's no right or wrong answer. And I've been debating about bringing this to you because I know I'm going to get murdered in the comments. I'm going to get murdered with this topic, but this is a topic that I've been needing to bring to you guys. And since I got my teeth cleaned today and my gums are sore, I figured why not talk forever about something that's going to ruin my YouTube career. So here we go. But I did want to let you guys know where I stood. And I think after talking about this for long, I still don't know where I stand. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. I know this is a controversial topic, but I would really love to know what you guys think. This is not something that one person can definitively say this is the right way or the wrong way. It is definitely a conversation and a debate, and I would truly love to know what you guys think. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, let me know in the comment section below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.